At the end of the day, it's a simple strategy, right? If you're trying to use capital market tools to raise capital to buy Bitcoin in a way that increases Bitcoin per share. And you do that on a frequent cadence as quickly as you can so that you're having that plus 5%, plus 10%, plus 20%, once a month, twice a month, as fast as you can. And that compounding effect is incredible. And it really adds up. So, we're still trying to figure out as an industry how to articulate the power of that compounding Bitcoin per share, compounding Bitcoin yield. And I think it'll be very interesting over the next couple of years to see how we improve on articulating that simplicity. Compounding is a hard concept for a lot of people to wrap their heads around because the eighth wonder of the world, as Einstein framed it. And it's easy to underestimate it. And I think that's the incredible power of a Bitcoin treasury company is that the only thing better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin.
Yes.
So the only thing better than Bitcoin is Bitcoin that compounds in value over time. And of course, you end up paying a premium for that upfront. That's the mNAV that you're paying for. But, I think value delivery happens incredibly quickly if there's a track record of delivering significant Bitcoin yield over any time frame. And when you compare that to traditional equities that rely on PE ratios and income statement profits to generate value into the future, that happens over 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin treasury companies are able to deliver value in Strategy's case, under 2 years. In our case, a quarter of a year, and based on our current metrics. So it's all about trying to find ways to articulate that.
Yeah.
This episode of the Bitcoin Economy is brought to you in part by Ledn.
Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over 9 billion loans since 2018. And they were the first to offer proof of reserves.
With Ledn, you get custody loans, no credit checks, no monthly payments, and more. Visit ledn.io for more information.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Economy. We're live here at Bitcoin Asia in Hong Kong with Jesse Myers, head of Bitcoin strategy at the Smarter Web Company. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Jesse, super excited. I know we want to do this sit down. You've been very big in the space for a while, a co-founder of OnRamp, and then I think a very clear voice, really talking through a lot of, the mechanics of what Michael Saylor's been doing with strategy. I saw you at Strategy World briefly on top of all the content, as well as showing people how the different Bitcoin treasury companies are pulling capital from different areas, different investment vehicles, whether it's fixed income, the bond market. And since Strategy World, you were announced as head of Bitcoin strategy at Smarter Web Company. Let's just start there and what brought you onto the company? What was the excitement that made you want to work with Andrew Webley, who's been on our podcast before? And what do you look to bring to the team?
Yeah, I'm super excited about Smarter Web. Basically, I think that there's going to be a winning Bitcoin treasury company in every capital market in the world. We've seen that with Strategy in the US, now Metaplanet in Japan. And I think there's going to be a leading Bitcoin treasury company in the UK and then in every other capital market. And what Andrew's built as the first Bitcoin treasury company in the UK and the traction he's gotten with retail investors and now the institutional community in the UK, I think it puts Smarter Web in a really exciting place to follow that Metaplanet journey, the pathway that they've established. And, it's quite clear what has to happen to just keep following that playbook. And we're on track to do that. So I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity to be a part of what I think will become the winning Bitcoin treasury company in the UK.
What's unique about the UK market? One thing someone had mentioned yesterday was comparing the different communities around Bitcoin treasury companies in the UK to football clubs and how fervent they are, how passionate they are. What's been your experience?
I was thinking about that today, actually. That's true. I think there's a culture of passionate support and loyalty to a particular brand and tribe in the UK cultural fabric. And I think that does show up in terms of how people get behind businesses. And we're seeing that with Bitcoin treasury companies as well. So, I think it's exciting that Smarter Web has such an incredible resonance with Brits, started by a Brit, 4 Brits who are fed up with how things have been going in the UK. On Twitter now, it's a bit of a secondary metric, but we have the third largest Bitcoin treasury company community on Twitter. I think that just kind of speaks to the degree of resonance that Andrew in particular has with UK investors and now with Bitcoin treasury company investors globally. And I think that's the foundation of Smarter Web's identity and the support that comes from those individuals in the community who are talking about it with their friends and family and networks and spreading the word about, the Smarter Web as the Bitcoin treasury company for the UK that's trying to follow the Metaplanet playbook and is on track to do that, and the opportunity that may create, if we continue to follow that path. Yeah.
What has been some of the educational pieces that you feel have been the most challenging or have required, the most work, with the community? I know that Andrew had talked about, talking about mNAV or talking about accretive Bitcoin accumulation and phrasing it as compound Bitcoin because the word compound was familiar to investors there. As someone who's an American and lives in Texas, how do you come in and what have been some of the ways that you've tried to, educate people on how these accretive Bitcoin companies work?
Yeah, that's part of what's so exciting. It's very early days for articulating this playbook and making it simple. At the end of the day, it's a simple strategy, right? If you're trying to use capital market tools to raise capital to buy Bitcoin in a way that increases Bitcoin per share. And you do that on a frequent cadence as quickly as you can so that you're having that plus 5%, plus 10%, plus 20%, once a month, twice a month, as fast as you can. And that compounding effect is incredible. And it really adds up. So, we're still trying to figure out as an industry how to articulate the power of that compounding Bitcoin per share, compounding Bitcoin yield. And I think it'll be very interesting over the next couple of years to see how we improve on articulating that simplicity. Compounding is a hard concept for a lot of people to wrap their heads around because the eighth wonder of the world, as Einstein framed it, and it's easy to underestimate it. And I think that's the incredible power of a Bitcoin treasury company is that the only thing better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin.
Yes.
So the only thing better than Bitcoin is Bitcoin that compounds in value over time. And of course, you end up paying a premium for that upfront. That's the mNAV that you're paying for. But, I think value delivery happens incredibly quickly if there's a track record of delivering significant Bitcoin yield over any time frame. And when you compare that to traditional equities that rely on PE ratios, income statement profits to generate value into the future, that happens over 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah. And Bitcoin treasury companies are able to deliver value in Strategy's case, under 2 years. In our case, a quarter of a year, and based on our current metrics. So it's all about trying to find ways to articulate that. Yeah.
What if you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, now you can with Blockware. New tax guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill will allow American miners to write off 100% of the cost of their mining hardware for a single tax year. That's right, 100%. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to do everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You get to stack Bitcoin at a discount every single day while also saving for the upcoming tax season. Get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/TBE. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/TBE. Now back to the interview.
What's been, I think, what you can share? We saw a good purchase last night from the Smarter Web company. What are some of the ways that you guys have been using just different tools to raise capital to buy more Bitcoin?
Yeah, we think about it with a layered approach of, you have equity issuance with private placements and also our ATM style instrument. Those provide different kinds of capital raising. The ATM is running on up days just passively in the background. And we report on those results every 2 weeks. So investors are learning that that's happening every 2 weeks and those proceeds are plowed into Bitcoin. And then our private placements are lumpier, right? They happen when there's demand and interest and we can generate a sizable book. On top of that, we're now layering our smarter convert structure, which is a Bitcoin denominated convertible notes. which is, I think, an incredibly exciting instrument because I think anybody who's holding Bitcoin would like to outperform Bitcoin, but it's incredibly hard to do that, right? Like, how do you outperform 30 to 50% CAGR? Usually it's not worth trying to do that. And Smarter Convert, what it does is it allows investors to keep holding Bitcoin and grants them the option value of an option to convert into Smarter Web stock over a year or 18 months if that stock outperforms Bitcoin during that period. So it's kind of incredible. It's like the best way to outperform Bitcoin is by holding Bitcoin and getting the option value on top of an option to convert it into a Smarter Web if it does better. And if not, then you keep holding your Bitcoin. You get your Bitcoin back. So I think that area of our fundraising approach is going to grow, and we're going to keep that to 30% of our overall capital. But so we're layering in capital raising tools. We'll probably keep adding to that with a mindset of we're trying to grow into a meta planet and eventually a strategy style Bitcoin treasury company.
Yeah. From the regulatory side, is there any conversations that you guys have? Is there anything that investors should look at differently? I know that with MetaPlanet, people have been discussing, are they going to change the capital gains rate for Bitcoin purchases and sales in Japan? Is that something that you guys look at or have conversations with UK regulators about?
Yeah, we don't have direct conversations with UK regulators, but it has been interesting how Bitcoin treasury companies, I think, have accelerated some of the regulatory frameworks that would inevitably have been put into place. But in the UK now, they've authorized Bitcoin ETNs, which is kind of the first step in formalizing, Bitcoin products for investors in the UK. And that's a big step. That's a great step. And it's also good for Smarter Web, we think, because 18 months ago in the US, Bitcoin ETFs launched, and the biggest beneficiary of that over the last 18 months was strategy. And I think that's because when you have additional regulatory clarity, it becomes more acceptable, more compelling, more available to any investor, especially institutional investors, to get some exposure to Bitcoin. And if you're going to do that, do you want to centralize your coins in an ETF and get just Bitcoin? Or do you want to centralize your coins in a Bitcoin treasury company and get compounding Bitcoin? I think that's why strategy has done so well over the last 18 months in terms of ingesting capital from the equity markets. And I think that kind of tailwind will probably play out over the next 18 months in the UK now that there's greater regulatory clarity around Bitcoin products. And you want to see that pendulum going in the right direction, or like a regulatory clarity increasing. And we're definitely seeing that in the UK right now. So I think that's just a good tailwind.
Jesse, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you jumping in here. What's the best way to follow you guys? What kind of upcoming announcements can we be looking out for? And what are you looking to get out of this conference?
Yeah, have had a bunch of really good conversations with the potential investors and potential partners. And I think it's one of the exciting things about coming to a conference like this is you get to have a lot of those conversations in a short space of time, and then we'll follow up on those over the coming weeks and turn those into the next set of announcements, hopefully, for the Smarter Web. And I think we've gotten a lot of traction on that front because at this moment in time, there's excitement about the amount of value. Given that Bitcoin treasury company valuations have compressed in terms of their mNAV over the last 2 months, there's a perception now that it's a good time. Yeah. So I think that's part of what's exciting. Can't really say anything in particular, and we'll see what comes to fruition. But I'm excited about what we have on the horizon over the next few months. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's exciting, and I know this is something that we're going to keep following. We plan on chatting with Andrew from Smarter Web today, and I really appreciate you jumping in here, Jesse. So enjoy the rest of the conference, and welcome back to the Bitcoin economy.
Thank you.